I won't be using pluses or minuses throughout this video because I just think it makes it a little bit murkier. With that said, let's get started on the video. At number 1, the Bears surprisingly didn't mess things up and went with the best player at the most important position with Caleb Williams. I think this is a really good pick because, one, they obviously needed a quarterback, so that fits the need right there. But also, Caleb Williams is that guy. He, as a prospect, looks very polished, and he really brings a lot to the table athletically. It's not just being refined. He's fast. He's got a great arm. He can extend plays for days. I think this was the exact pick the Bears needed to make, and they made it. So they get an A for that. I'm not quite as high on pick number 2. I think, frankly, it was a bit of a reach. Daniels was my quarterback 3, and he was drafted number 2 overall. I just think May, simply put, is a better prospect, with May having the far better arm and being a lot more proficient attacking the middle of the field. Daniels is very athletic, and he holds on to the ball longer than you would like, but a lot of that is him playmaking. One thing, though, is that when he holds onto the ball, he oftentimes looks to run with it as opposed to trying to throw the ball, and that's less than ideal. But with that said, the Commanders definitely needed a quarterback, and it is hard to evaluate quarterbacks, so they still get a B for Jaden Daniels. I really like pick number 3 here with Drake May. I think, as I was saying before, I think he's the second best quarterback in this class, and he's tied for being the second best player overall. He is just so athletically gifted. He's got a cannon for an arm. He's more than mobile enough. And when he creates plays, he's looking to pass. He keeps his eyes downfield, and he can run, but he's looking to get the big play as well, which is very nice. And I think May is the exact right pick for the Patriots because he doesn't hold on to the ball quickly. He doesn't get rid of it quickly, but he's not holding on to it as long as Jaden Daniels is. So if they have a poor offensive line, that's still fine. I give this an A. Marvin Harrison Jr. at number 4 is also fantastic. He could be the best player in the draft, and he fulfills a need for Arizona. So those are both really good check marks to have. At number 4, to get arguably the best player in the entire draft, he's my number 2 player, tied with Drake May. That is exceptional for the Cardinals, but you factor in too that they actually really needed wide receiver help as well. That's just the perfect storm. And I think with Kyler Murray hopefully being healthy this upcoming year, I think the Cardinals could cause some issues for teams with their passing offense because Harrison Jr. should likely be ready to hit the ground running. So I think there shouldn't be an issue for the Cardinals. I give this an A. At number 5, if you would have asked me right after the draft, I would have been pretty low on the pick. But looking back on it, Joe Alt is a fine enough selection for the Chargers, I think. I'm going to give it a B. The reason is I think Malik Neighbors and Rome Odunze are both better and more valuable players at position of bigger need for the Chargers. But Alt is arguably a blue chip player, which is just simply put, the best type of player there is, where you can feel safe with him basically regardless of anything else. He was my 6th best player in this class, so to go at number 5 is perfectly fine. I just think that the Chargers needed receiver a little bit more, but this is a fine pick. At number 6, the Giants got away with theft, as Malik Neighbors was my 4th best player, and he went 6th overall. So maybe it doesn't seem like the biggest gem, but it definitely is a great find for the Giants. They really needed wide receiver help, And Malik Neighbors is right there with Marvin Harrison Jr. for the best receiver in this class. He is arguably the best receiver in this draft because he is the most explosive wide receiver in this class. He is dynamic with the ball in his hands, and he is a great route runner as well. I've said this before, but ThatFranchiseGuy has been scouting players since 2016, and he said that Neighbors is the second best receiver he's seen in that time. So I think that carries a lot of weight. Neighbors is the real deal, and this is an A pick. At number 7, the Titans got a little funky with it and went with J.C. Latham, which makes sense. The Titans do need desperately a right tackle, and Latham is naturally a right tackle. So that does make sense, but I would have much rather moved Fuaga to right tackle because I just think Fuaga is a much cleaner prospect. Fuaga is dominant in the run game like Latham should be, but just hasn't shown himself to be. Latham has the body to be just an absolute mauler, but Fuaga has the attitude that is hard to teach. So I think moving Fuaga to right tackle would have made more sense. Latham was my 21st best prospect, and he went number 7 overall. I think that's just a bit rich. I would have, again, looked elsewhere. So this gets a D from me. At number 8, we have perhaps the worst pick in this entire draft with Michael Penix Jr. It is just incredible that the Falcons thought this was the way to go because they had absolutely no need for quarterback at this current moment with Kirk Cousins being signed to a huge deal. I think Penix is fine if he could be developed by a team and deployed early on to see what he truly is at the NFL level. But he's just going to be riding the pine for a while, and that really mitigates the value of a rookie quarterback contract. They could have easily traded back and still gotten a quarterback of roughly his value. I think the Falcons could have competed for a Super Bowl if they drafted correctly. This gets an F for me. At number 9, the Bears did it again with a great pick in Rome Odunze. He is simply great value for the Bears. I had him as the 5th best player in this draft, and he went 9th overall, so that's awesome value. Odunze fits a need because DJ Moore and Keenan Allen are both fantastic receivers, but there's very little after them. So I think it makes a ton of sense to go Odunze, especially with Keenan Allen aging and having an injury history. So I think this is a very good pick for the Bears. I think they're doing everything right for Caleb Williams by insulating the team with talent for him. So I think this is going to be a new era of Bears football, which is really exciting. If you couldn't tell, Odunze gets an A from me. At number 10, the Vikings hopefully get their quarterback of the future with J.J. McCarthy. They only had to trade up a middle of the 6th round pick, according to the Jimmy Johnson trade chart, to ensure that they got McCarthy, which is more than fair to make sure you get your guy. And I think this is a really good fit for the Vikings because McCarthy is a dissector across the middle of the field where the Vikings like to attack. So I think that's really logical then to go after McCarthy. I think it was perhaps a little early for McCarthy for my likings because he was the 19th best player in my board and he went 10th overall. But I think with a quarterback, you're obviously going to go a little bit earlier than where you naturally should. So overall, it gets a B from me. At 11, the Jets made a pick that I initially wasn't high on, but I've sort of come around to with Olu Fashanu. They traded 10 and 203 for 11, 129, and 157, which equates to them getting a mid of the round 6th round pick in the Jimmy Johnson trade chart. So that's great to trade back one pick and still get your guy. I don't think Fashanu was the best pick. I would have gone with Brock Bowers for their situation, but I do think that Fashanu is a logical pick because moving down the line, the Jets are going to need offensive tackle. And even if Tyron Smith or Morgan Moses get hurt, you have insulation there. This pick gets a B from me. At 12, the Broncos did the unthinkable and made me think that another drafted quarterback was not great. The Falcons did that initially with Penix, and now the Broncos did that with Nix. I don't think it's the biggest reach. Nix, for me, was the 31st best player in this draft, so he should probably go in the teens because he's a quarterback. But he's going to execute the system well, at least. He could be a top 16 quarterback. He does have that going for him, at least. He's athletically proficient. He's not great with his throw power or his mobility, but he's all right in both categories. This is going to get a C for me. I think it's just all right. At 13, there's a lot to go over with Brock Bowers. He's a total steal because he was my 7th best player and he went 13th overall. So that's fantastic for the Raiders. But it's a weird fit because with Tucker and Mayer, they have the slot position and tight end position filled out pretty well already, which those are the two positions that Bowers is going to be playing. So it's a bit odd of a fit, but the value is definitely there. So I think it's something that at least makes sense for the Raiders, which historically isn't something you could always count on. So good for them. I think overall, I'm going to lean into the positive more so than the negative because I do just think the value was so excellent. And I give this pick a B, and it's a strong B. At number 14, the Saints got a really good value pick in Talise Fuaga. Fuaga was the perfect value because I had him as the 13th best player, and he went 14th overall. So that's really nice. Trevor Penning has been rough at left tackle, so Fuaga could fill in right there immediately. And if Penning gets his act together and starts playing at a higher level, Ryan Ramczyk becomes expendable. So this pick has a lot of value to it. It can pay dividends now and later, which is really something you like to look for with picks of any sort, but especially a first round pick. It's nice to be able to get great value in the future and the present. So this gets an A from me. I think it's just a really good pick. At 15, the Colts got a good value pick that's very interesting in Laiatu Latu. He was my 12th best player in this class. He went 15th overall, so that's good value. It's just a bit odd that the Colts targeted Latu because with Samson Ibukam and Kwity Paye, they have two good edge rushers as it stands. And Latu is really going to have to work his way into the rotation. No matter what, the Colts are going to have a dominant 3-man edge rushing trio, which is very valuable. You want to keep your guys fresh and make sure they're able to give 100% on every play. So that's something the Colts will have. It's just not the most seamless of fits. But again, the value is definitely there. This pick gets a B. I think that's totally fair. At 16, the Seahawks got really good value in Byron Murphy II. Murphy is a great player that is an interior disruptor. Dallas Turner would have also made sense. I think Turner is most people's better defensive player, but Turner is an edge rusher and Murphy's an interior again, which the interior is a bigger need for the Seahawks, so that makes sense. Justin Madubuike has been compared, or Murphy has been compared to Madubuike. So that makes sense with Seattle having Baltimore's old coach. He coached Madubuike, obviously, with the Ravens this past year. I think Murphy is really good value. I had him as the 15th best player. He went 16th overall. This pick gets an A. Speaking of Dallas Turner, he's the next pick to the Vikings at pick 17. He's my 9th best player, and he went 17th overall, so logically he should be graded really highly. But the difference between him and any other player that would be drafted in that same scenario is the fact that the Vikings traded up to get him, and they traded up a pretty hefty amount. They traded 157, a future 3rd and 4th, and they lost an early 4th in value if the Vikings are average. That's again with the future picks not being diminished any. So, and they also obviously gave up their 1st for the pick swap as well. So I think that was a lot to give up. It makes me a little bit more sour on this pick than I would have otherwise been, and I'm only going to give it a C because of the trade. Amarius Mims to the Bengals was one of the more out of left field selections, in my opinion, because the Bengals already have 2 really good offensive tackles in Orlando Brown and Trent Brown, the Brown brothers that aren't actually brothers. And Mims fits the type. He's obviously super huge, and he's just a real mauler in the run game. He lays people out. So that's similar to what the Browns do for the Bengals. It's weird to say since there's a team, the Browns. But Mims fits the bill is what I'm trying to say. The issue is, though, I think Fatanu would have been a better pick. I have Fatanu ranked more highly than Mims. And I think the Bengals really just didn't need tackle. This pick gets a D. Jared Verse to the Rams is just chef's kiss. Verse was my 17th ranked player. He went 19th overall, so that's really good. Verse is also the best edge rusher available. And guess what? The Rams desperately needed an edge rusher because Michael Hoyt, their edge rusher number 2, is actually a defensive tackle that's playing out of position currently. And he's not doing too hot at there, which makes sense. He's not playing at his natural position. He's playing at a very different position. Verse is super powerful, has great technique. He's got some good explosiveness to him as well. He's not the most agile, but I'll take his athletic profile any day of the week. This pick is an easy A for me. It's the commingling of value and need. It's just a great pick for the Rams. The Steelers also got some really nice value with Troy Fatanu, as he was my 18th ranked player and he went 20th overall. So that's nice value. He fits a need with Dan Moore struggling and really just being inconsistent throughout his career. He had a poor rookie year, a pretty all right second year, and then he struggled his 3rd year as well. So you never really know what you're going to get with Dan Moore. He's very exciting in that sense, but that's not really what you want from an offensive lineman. You want consistency, which Fatanu should hopefully bring to the Steelers. I think he's a really good pick. I think that you could have also looked at wide receiver because the receiving room for the Steelers is just really lacking. But you can only make one selection here. I think Fatanu gets an A. We go from a very logical pick for the Steelers to a what type of selection from the Dolphins with Chop Robinson at 21. Robinson was a reach in my eyes. I had him as the 33rd best player. He went 21st overall. And he wasn't even necessary for the Dolphins because Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb are both awesome edge rushers. Yes, you would like to have 3 edge rushers, as the Dolphins did last year with Van Ginkel added to their group. But you really just need the two guys and to rotate them. I don't understand this selection. I think it's, again, a reach and one that they didn't need to make because there just wasn't the positional necessity for them. Yeah, I'm not super high on this pick. I give it a D. I have an appreciation for the Eagles, but I am disgusted with them just getting away with this every single year, seemingly. Quinyon Mitchell was my best defensive player in this draft, and he went 22nd overall to the Eagles. They somehow just stumble into great players with this being their selection this year and Carter being their pick last year. I can't believe it. It fits an exact need for the Eagles as well. They desperately needed cornerback help with James Bradbury struggling last year and getting up there in age. Slay is also getting up there in age. This is just an awesome pick for the Eagles. If you don't give this an A, you are a hater of the Eagles. Brian Thomas Jr. to the Jags, very solid pick. He was my 22nd ranked player. He went 23rd overall. The Jaguars exchanged first round picks with the Vikings and got 157, a future third, and a future fourth in exchange for their pick with the Vikings. And the Jimmy Johnson trade chart says that they gained a fourth in value if Minnesota is average, and early fourth at that. So that's really good for the Jaguars. I believe the pick that they gave up for in the first was number 17. So they traded up or traded back a little bit, but they still got their guy. Thomas is electric. He's a great deep threat. This pick gets an A because of the trade as well. Terrion Arnold to the Lions makes a ton of sense. The Lions traded number 29 and 73 for number 24 overall, which according to the Jimmy Johnson trade chart, that means the Lions lost a late third in value. So great player and pick, but bad trade to get there. Arnold was my 10th ranked player in this class. He went 24th overall. So that's really good value. It's just losing the third is a little bit rough there. You would have liked to have lost about a fourth in value instead of giving away the third there, because that would be about equivalent at that point. But Arnold is a really legit player. He's a great prospect. This pick gets a B for me. At 25, I found the Packers selection to be inexplicable. They didn't need an offensive tackle because Rasheed Walker is a good young offensive tackle, and Zach Tom is also a good young tackle. So there was no need to draft Morgan. Maybe they see him as the right guard of the future. I don't really think that would make too much sense when Graham Barton was right there. I think Barton's just a better player than Morgan in the interior because Barton has experience there, and I think he's overall just a cleaner prospect. Morgan, he was a reach at number 25. I had him as the 35th best player in this class. He's going to get a D from me. Speaking of Graham Barton, though, the Buccaneers cleaned up on the Packers' mistake by drafting Graham Barton right after the Packers selection. It was the perfect pick. I had Barton as the 26th best player in this draft. He went 26th overall, so the value was perfectly fine. The Bucs also really needed help on the interior, and Barton can play anywhere along the line. I don't think he's the most natural tackle, but I do think he could even play tackle if Wirfs or Godeke went down. And I know for certain Barton can play on the interior just fine. So that's great stuff for the Bucs. I think this pick is very logical. I think it fills a need. The value's there. Overall, it gets an A from me. The Cardinals couldn't go too long without doing something stupid because Darius Robinson was my 45th best player in this class, and he went 27th overall. Robinson then is a huge reach, and he was needed less than a corner was or is for the Cardinals, because right now Sean Murphy-Bunting is the best corner for the Cardinals, and he is really struggling. He was the 89th out of 127 corners this year, according to PFF grades. That's really rough. And the Cardinals said, nope, let's get Robinson to be an edge, defensive interior, tweener. That's just something that doesn't make sense to me. I give this pick an F. So the Chiefs traded up for Xavier Worthy, and they traded a whole bunch of late picks. And according to the Jimmy Johnson trade chart, they lost a mid-6th in doing so. They drafted the 49th best player in this draft, according to me, 28th overall. That is horrendous value. And Worthy was pretty low on the consensus draft board as well. It wasn't just my board. The consensus draft board had him, I believe, in the 30s or 40s. So he wasn't too highly regarded by most people either. Worthy appears to just be speed, and he's not really a good deep threat even at that. And if he's not a good deep threat at the college level, he's going to struggle even more at the NFL level. This pick gets an F for me with the trade included. Dallas, off the heels of that Detroit trade that I mentioned earlier, with 29 and 73 going for number 24 overall, Dallas got the 34th best player in this draft, in my opinion, at number 29. So it's all right value. It's not anything spectacular. But Guyton was something they needed because Terrence Steele really struggled this past year at right tackle, and he might be getting moved on from eventually. So Guyton makes a lot of sense to get going in his development as soon as this draft. And Guyton, I think, is secondary to the trade. They got a late third in value gained, and they got the guy they wanted to draft anyways. This pick gets a B for me. The Ravens got a really nice value pick in Nate Wiggins, as he was my 24th ranked player, and he went 30th overall, so that's good value. The only thing is, I don't see corner as much of a need for the Ravens even before this pick, because obviously you have Marlon Humphrey, then you have Brandon Stevens, who was really solid this past season, and Arthur Millette was actually good for the Ravens last year as well, so that's 3 good corners. That's not even including Kyle Hamilton, who can also play nickel corner. So I think it's a bit odd, but the value is definitely there, so that makes it a fine selection. I just would have rather gone with Ladd McConkey, because I think that McConkey is about as good of a receiver as Wiggins is a defensive back, but McConkey marks a better need for the Ravens. So this gets a B for me. The Niners are basically proclaiming to the world by drafting Ricky Pearsall that the trade for Brandon Ayuk is inevitable. Pearsall is just not a great selection in my eyes, but he does mark somewhat of a need if Ayuk is truly to be moved on from, which I guess is the case. Pearsall was my 43rd ranked player. He went 31st overall, so that's bad value. And the 49ers already have 3 wide receivers on their roster right now that are legit very good receivers. So I just don't really get this one. I guess they are going to move on from Ayuk, but they're not going to get a first this year now. I don't like this pick. I give it an F. The Panthers traded 33 and 141 for 32 and 200, which according to the Jimmy Johnson trade chart means the Panthers lost a mid-sixth in value for Buffalo. And then what do they do with the pick? They draft Xavier Legette, and that is just not good. Legette was my 48th best player in this draft, and they went and drafted him 32nd overall, and they traded up too to get him, which is just not logical. Ladd McConkey, Troy Franklin, Keon Coleman, they were all available to be drafted if somebody drafted Legette before they did. This is another one that gets an F for me. Thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed for more content.